Ladies and gentlemen, dear comrades, once again, I'll be speaking about our plans. The new liberal Europe has no future. If we needed proof of this, it would be given by the spectacle of the disaggregation of the community of European states on the matter of refugees. We also see the devastating effect of neoliberalism amongst those experiencing that. We must say that there is no possibility for us to show empathy or compassion. It is irreconcilable with the values inherited from the French Revolution, namely liberty, equality, and fraternity. The Europe of wage tax dumping is the death of solidarity. We can say that without exaggerating. If Europe is not saved by a solidarity-based policy, it will be destroyed by national selfishness. Dear comrades, solidarity is indivisible. As long as the European states wage war in view of North American imperialism, the flow of refugees shall continue. War is the terror of the rich. Terrorism is the war of the poor. This is why Peter Ustinov condensed in a single sentence the consequence of the external policy of imperialism. I believe it is irrational to bomb Syria after the terror attacks committed in Paris by French citizens. During the solemn ceremony held at the Cour des Invalides in memory of the victims of the terror attacks, they sung the famous song by the pacifist Jacques Brel, "When you have only love to cover with sunshine the ugliness of the suburbs." That song, these lines, we could have understood it as an invitation to reconsider the policy of integration in the suburbs, which has been a resounding failure. But François Hollande preferred to opt for George W. Bush, even though Jaï Naïm would continue to sing, "When you have only love to speak to the guns and only a song to convince a drum." That led to an odd contrast. On the one hand, the interpretation of a lyric word sung in the tribute to love and pacifism, and on the other hand, the warlike posture adopted by the French president. Europe, be it Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, or Syria, must set itself free from its links to the imperialist North American policy and come back to the path of its autonomous external policy of reconciliation and peace along the lines of Jean Jaurès and Willy Brandt. Europe, be it in Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, or Syria, a social policy of integration in European suburban areas is far more efficient to combat terrorism than bombing Syrian cities. The mothers in Damas, they're also crying for their children. You must understand this if you want peace in the Near East. Solidarity is at the foundation of European democracies. Otherwise, the neoliberal Europe would be putting the Greek government down to its knees. The president of the Portuguese Republic sought to prevent the formation of a left-wing government in his country on the following grounds. After 40 years of democracy, no Portuguese government has yet been behind any anti-European formation against the Treaty of Lisbon, the Budget Pact, the Stability Pact, or both pacts. Formations that are there to tear apart the Eurozone, taking Portugal out of the Euro with the disappearance of NATO, and to continue by virtue of the competencies given to me by the Constitution, it is my duty to do everything so that no negative signal shall be sent to the banks or to the investors or to the market. That is what he said. He was referring to the European Union Treaty that clearly he had not read carefully enough for government. Indeed, in Article 2, the treaty stipulates that the Union is founded upon the values of respect of human dignity, liberty, democracy, equality, and the rule of law, as well as the respect for the rights of human beings, including those of minorities. Clearly, the attempt made by the Portuguese president to prevent a majority in parliament to constitute a government was undemocratic, just as the governments and parliaments in Greece were illegally submitted. When, in May 2003, the draft European Constitution was presented, it was placed under the auspices of the sentence made by the Greek president. Our constitution is called a democracy because the state is not based on a small but on a large number of citizens. But, and this is characteristic, the quotation was inaccurate. Here is what Pericles actually said. Because our political regime serves not the interests of the small numbers, but of the majority, it is a democracy. But irrespective of how you view the state of democracy in ancient Greece, the message is clear. A society can call itself democratic or not, depending decisively on the results. A society can say that it is democratic only if, within itself, the interests of the majority of its members is imposed. These are the existential criteria. When only 1% of the world's population has as much as the remaining 99%, you cannot decently claim that the world is democratic. The former North American President Jimmy Carter became aware of this, noting that the United States is in fact an oligarchy with unlimited corruption, tearing apart our political system, favoring some contributors, Democrats or Republicans. In the neoliberal Brussels and in European democracies, the same thing. Some weeks ago in Germany, in the Social Justice Index, it was noted that the youngsters are the biggest losers of the European crisis and European indebtedness. 23 million people under 18, meaning 28%, are threatened by poverty or social exclusion. And 5.4 million young people have neither jobs nor training. In Europe, we do not act in the interests of the largest numbers, and therefore not democratically. But for us, dear comrades, people from the left, this is not new. We know that capitalism and democracy are incompatible and can lead to oligarchy, as we can see throughout the world, around the world. For reasons that are linked to the system itself, liberal Europe has no future. Capitalism bears within itself war, just as clouds bring a storm, as Jean Jaurès said. We can say that capitalism brings within itself the waves of refugees and migrants fleeing misery, just like the clouds bring a storm, not only bringing war for commodities or markets, but also thief is actually stealing from the periphery for the benefit of the center. The populations therefore migrate towards the center to find a better life. It is not only about Syrians or Afghans or Iraqis or Africans coming to Europe. We also have Southern Europeans coming to find work in other European countries and especially in Germany. In February 2011, Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor, on an official visit to Madrid, urged skilled Spanish workers to come to Germany. She claimed the huge demand for skilled labor and the thousands of job offers for engineers. This is how Portugal, in recent years, lost 500,000 people, many of whom were skilled. As a portion of the country's population, it's as if Germany had lost 4 million people. What would the President of Europe say? Because this is what the media say about the Chancellor. If Germany were to be bled that way, and if the head of government of another European country were to come to Berlin to take away skilled workers and its engineers, by arguing that it is its duty, it was her duty to do everything so that no negative signals will be sent out to banks or investors or to the market, Cavaco Silva revealed the truth as it stands. In Portugal, as in the rest of Europe, decisions are not taken in the interest of populations, but in the interest of banks, investors, and the markets. It's only repeating what was said in 1996 by the former president of the Bundesbank, who said to the political leaders of the world, "From now on, gentlemen, you are all subject to the control of the international financial markets. Goodbye, democracy." Cavaco Silva, in his own way, also confirmed what the president of the European Commission said, the famous Jean-Claude Juncker. There can be no democratic choice against the European treaties. And this is where the problem lies. The British journalist Evan Sprichard summarized in the Telegraph the what's at stake for left-wing parties in Europe. European socialists are facing a dilemma. They must take note of the fact that the European Union is a right-wing enterprise, not at all attached to democracy. If they wish to react in some way, there is a risk that they would not be able ever to come to power. So Brussels has really created a monster. It is precisely for this reason that we need the B plan, to give back to this monster a human face. In other words, the face of democracy. This B plan does not claim to abolish the global democracy of financial markets in one go, or even capitalism, but it must show the steps that a left-wing government or those associated with the left wing can follow to escape from financial dictatorship and the obstacles of the European Treaty. We could make a decisive difference in Europe if one member state were able to take over control of its central bank. And if that central bank could once again do what central banks were invented to do, to finance public spending. Neither the financial markets nor the rating agencies can prevent the central bank from creating currency. The European Central Bank would do far better to use its 60 billion euros per month, not to buy state debts from banks, but to finance infrastructure projects in Europe. In that case, it could directly pass on its funds to the European Investment Bank. As to whether or not these investments should be financed by a national central bank or by the European Central Bank, it all depends on the probability of success for each option. We believe, and this is what we have seen in European debates so far, that a national bank should be in charge of that. Let's not forget that many European ministers of finance were in favor of the exit of Greece from the euro system during the talks, omitting to specify the terms and conditions. And yet, it was stated for countries like Greece, Portugal, or maybe Spain as well, that coming back to the European monetary system is indispensable. They could then devalue their currency and have investments financed by their own central bank. That proposal, amongst traditional economists, led them to sound an alarm against inflationist dangers. But look at the huge mass of liquidity emitted by central banks around the world and the impact on prices. That cry of alarm, that alert, is just the fruit of dogmatic rigidity. To those who today still continue to believe that the left-wing policy is possible in the euro system, I would like to point this out. By entering the European monetary system, the states have deliberately abandoned the possibility of finding a solution to economic crises by devaluations or counter-cyclical financial policies. Within the framework of the current euro system's institutions, the only solution is an internal devaluation, with a drop in salaries and budgetary rigor as the only economic leeway. This is why I believe that the left wing in power in a member state should try to set itself free from the neoliberalism, waiting for all member states to abandon that paradigm. But that's like waiting for Godot. But if Greece and Portugal, or Spain as well, were to be mobilized together in consultation with the other member states to return to the European monetary system, which still exists, then the chances of reforming the euro system would be greater. If the German left wing were to take part in a government in the near future, its first task would be to put a stop to wage dumping in Germany. It would be a wonderful signal for all of Europe. A government cannot sign a collective agreement. We must therefore come back to the laws that deteriorated the rapport de force to the detriment of trade unions and workers. If Jeremy Corbyn were to become the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, we can dream, can't we? The neoliberal supremacy would be weakened in Europe decisively. Dear comrades, having a B plan, therefore, seeking to improve the social situation as regards employment in Europe, bringing a new democratic dream is not an illusion. It must define concrete steps, precise steps, improving the livelihood of people within a foreseeable time frame. The conditions for its implementation is that the European left wing, be it Syriza or Laik Unitida, Podemos or the Izquierda Unida, the Communist Party or the left-wing party, or other left-wing parties in the member states, they must come together despite rivalries, standing behind the same B plan so as to put an end to totalitarian policies in Europe and to rebuild a social democracy. Thank you for your attention.